When these two do debate, whether it's on the 4th or the 10th, will we actually hear policy? Because right now it's just a lot of smack talk, and that's not helping anyone when it comes to prices at the grocery store.
I think we will hear policy. I think that she should stick to her guns. Kamala Harris, Trump agreed to this debate, exactly the terms that he agreed to. He shouldn't be allowed to renege. He shouldn't be allowed to try to push her around. I think maybe he thinks because he's a man and she's a woman. I mean, that's how deluded and such a narcissist Trump is. Trump agreed to these debate terms. He needs to show up. He needs to do exactly what he said he was going to do. And I don't think Kamala needs to debate him. If he wants to play games and be a chicken and not show up, I think she'll be ahead in the polls, well ahead by September. He'll need the debate. He'll come crawling back to the debate that he himself agreed to with exactly those terms. He thinks Fox is going to bail him out by giving a really slanted debate. Remember, this is the debate form and the terms that he agreed to. So he can either show up or he can keep acting like a loser, acting like he's scared of her. She's the prosecutor. He's the felon. If he's got any brains, he'll show up and not look like a chicken.
Well, it'd be interesting. I mean, he wants to debate a week earlier than the first proposed debate. And let's not bring up the word chicken, because some people might think that, you know, it was not a brave move by President Biden to step down. In fact, it wasn't a brave move by any of the Democrats to not be more honest about his condition before he stepped down. Plenty of smack talk here on NewsNation.
Adrienne,
however,
he saved
Adam,
the party.
wait,
Adrienne,
Adam.
he saved Adrienne, by stepping down, he saved the party. Washington and Biden
some people believe that.
from power.
Some people believe that. Other people say this was a long time coming. But Adam, I want you to give us your take. Why do you think the former president is wanting to change the date and the location, the network for this debate?
Well, I think ABC is a very biased network. I think what David and I, and as on with you, Adrienne, you're a very fair network here. I think they should compromise and do a debate on NewsNation. It's one of the few networks out there that are really straight down the middle and just cover the news. I really enjoy it. And because, you know, George Stephanopoulos has always been a hardcore partisan Democrat. And I don't know what your guest is talking about, that Trump's a chicken. He just went to the NABJ, National Black Journalists. He went into like the lion's den. They're not favorable to him, but he had the courage to go there. And he was treated terribly by that, you know, by an ABC journalist and another partisan journalist. But he stood there, he took the fire. And then the media went after him afterwards. So to go, that's one thing Trump is definitely not, as a chicken. But when he should debate, it should be fair. There's enough networks out there that they can come to some kind of compromise and, you know, show their policies to the American people.
Well, I'm not biased by any means, but I do think that, you know, some would say that Fox is not going to offer a fair debate either. It would be nice if he'd come here. They're both welcome to have the debate on NewsNation. But, David, the Harris campaign says that she will put her record up against Trump's record any day, including on the issue of immigration. So with Democrats as well as Republicans, independents, many Americans concerned about the cost, the future of the millions of people who have crossed into this country illegally, undocumented, what do you think her message on immigration on that debate stage would be?
Well, Adrienne, the three of us can all agree that, yes, they should definitely debate on NewsNation.
Yay!
Concurred.
We've come to some unity in America.
Seconded. You know, they keep talking that she was the supposed immigration czar, which was not a title that she had. It was sort of a moniker that the right wing gave her. She was supposed to deal with the root causes of the immigration, and she did a good job with the root causes. You can see that the immigration from some of those countries that she was trying to deal with in Central America is down. One of the problems is that all of these people came in here seeking asylum, I think, on fairly, you know, non-existent basis. Too many people were paroled into the United States on this asylum basis. But, you know, that was not her decision. And I think that she's moved a lot to the center. And I think to commend her, she should say, you know what? Trump never seems to change his position. He never seems to learn from mistakes. He has to always be defensive and bombastic. I went to Washington. I did all these jobs. I learned an awful lot. I've moved to the center. I'm not for Medicare for all.
Where's the evidence that she's moved to the center,
I'm not for some of these positions that she had before. I think she's really moved to the center sensibly, and she should run on that.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.